So welcome, as I say. Here we are on this beautiful day. It's a special day for us here in Redondo. It's our Remembrance Sunday. And it's always a lovely thing to feel ourselves full of the love and the grace of those loved ones who have gone ahead of us, ready to greet us when we arrive in that sweet moment too. But today what we're looking at is embarking upon a new adventure. We are now going to meander through the wonderful book of Ernest Holmes called The Art of Life, which was once known as This Thing Called Life. It's one of the twin books to This Thing Called You, which we've just finished studying. And they're two of my very favorite books of Ernest Holmes. And every time I come to them, I'm always renewed and refreshed with something new and different. And I know that's going to be your experience too. So I recommend that you get the book if you haven't got it yet and make this journey with me. And in the first chapter, Ernest Holmes begins by saying, very first sentence, "The world is crying out for God." The world is crying out for God. And he says, "We caught up in the canyons of disillusionment, find ourselves at the end of a trail, stopped by granite barriers that wall us in." And he says, in this state, we find ourselves, we cry out, "Why have you forsaken me?" So in this state of disillusionment and that echo in our hearts, we look out into the world and we see all its vicissitudes and we see all its chaos and all its horror, and we cry out, "Why have you forsaken me?" And he said, the answer to this terrible feeling and this terrible sense of separation lies not within the willingness of God at all. It's nothing to do with that, but it has to do with our will to accept in faith, the presence and the power of an omniscient spirit, life, force, source, creator being. So he leaves us with the challenge of finding the solution to our feelings of disillusionment and our great longing. I think Augustine put it very succinctly when he said, "You have made us for yourself, O Lord, and our hearts cannot find rest until they rest in you." That's what we call in the saints divine discontent, the longing for this deeper, deeper communion with the source of our being, the creator of our lives and the lover of our souls. We have forgotten that the lover and the beloved are one. And until we remember that, it's always going to be the disillusionment of separation and the deep longing for communion. And that's how he starts off the book. And he calls us into looking at this and where we are in it all. And he points out that the God that we understand God to be, which is what most religions call this thing called life, the source of our being, first cause, and what philosophy calls reality, you and I must come to once and for all, deciding what that is in your life and in mine, and then further deciding whether or not we want to have the faith in it, the trust in it, the belief in it that's going to do the one thing that needs to happen for you and I to let all our restless yearnings cease, all our longings end, all our desires be fulfilled. And that is in faith, in belief, in trust, to wake up and recognize that power and that presence and respond to it. To wake up recognize, and respond. And you and I will not do that without faith. It comes back to that every time. And this thing called faith, what is it? Everybody's trying to define it. Simply for me, it's a feeling, it's a knowingness, it's an awareness that cannot be toppled. And it's a feeling, an awareness, and a knowingness that is mine without the shadow of any evidence to support it. Indeed, especially when all of the evidence points to the contrary of what I'm knowing and feeling and believing, nevertheless, there's something in me that knows something more than what the circumstances, the situations, and the conditions are telling me are the facts, and therefore wake up to them and stop being so much of a Pollyanna. Faith is a gift, and it's a gift I give to myself. It's a decision I make upon what I believe in. And I believe that there is a power for good in the universe greater than I am. And it lives in me, and it moves in me, and it has its being in me, and it uses me, and I use it. Now, it's easy to come to that awareness when everything seems to be rosy, and everything seems okay. But when that sense of being battered and crushed and knocked off of one's center for whatever reason arises, there's where the true test of faith comes in. Can I know what I know in any circumstance, in any situation, regardless of any mood or regardless of any feeling, and never let that change and allow that to be something that's immutable in me that never changes? That faith, that somehow or another there's more to this than meets the eye, and good comes out of everything. And it only comes out of everything when I know it comes out of everything. And I have to know it. And I am not going to know that. I am not going to have faith in that. I am not going to believe that if I don't know the source of my being, if I haven't got a relationship with the source of my being, if I'm not supporting a relationship with the source of my being, want it, deeply want it, truly want it. And so, Ernest Holmes says, there's a superimportance must be put on prayer and communion with our source. Prayer and communion with our source. Now, prayer simply just means being consciously in relationship with. And we know from the study of prayer, and God knows we've studied it up and down the yin-yang from all kinds of angles, and still we know there's more to know, and much more to know than what we know. But prayer is all about relationship. My life is a prayer, I am a prayer. Your life is a prayer, your life is a prayer. Sometimes it's a good, bad, or indifferent prayer, but nevertheless it's a prayer. And the more conscious it is, the more wondrous it is. But I have to support all of my relationships in my life or they go down the tubes. You know that. The only difference between the relationship I have with the source of my being and human beings is that my source never stops courting me. Never. I simply stop courting it. And that's where things go awry. And that's a big difference. The source of my being is so totally in love with me that will never, ever, ever stop or change or become anything other than it is. Life loves itself in all of its creation. And so we are called now again, and this is a beautiful season for this calling because we're moving into all kinds of religious ceremonies and celebrations that celebrate the one light, the one power, and the one presence amongst us. Christians are going in very soon to a season called Advent. Advent is preparing for the coming, preparing for the coming. And the cry is, Maranatha, Maranatha, come, 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 O Lord, come, come. And so we can prepare ourselves more fully now to be in that conscious awareness, in that communion with the source of our being, and make a deliberate decision. And it's about deliberate decisions. Make no mistake about it. Every good thing begins with a conscious, intentional, deliberate decision, a choice I make in my mind. The law of the Lord is written in your mind, and its living word is in your mouth, say the scriptures. Pure science of mind. And everywhere in scripture you read Lord, it means law. Everywhere in scripture you mean Lord, it means law in our understanding. O Lord, I long for your beingness to be expressed and experienced in my life. That means your law, your way of being, your consciousness, your action, your movement. Move upon me, upon the waters of my being, upon the waters of my life. Move upon me and change them for the better, for the better, for the better. Now, Ernest Holmes says in his second chapter of that book, we're doing the first 2 chapters this week, that the presence of one who has awakened themselves, who has realized themselves, who has come home to themselves, who has discovered the truth, beingness of themselves, and in so doing knows themselves to be their holy self, their sacred self, their unified self, their truth self. In such a one, there is a deep, deep, conscious awareness of life. And in that one's presence, all of us feel better. All of us feel more at peace. All of us feel more connected, more harmonious. And indeed, in the presence of such a one, miraculous things happen. And he cites the master teacher Jesus as the seminal example of one who is thus aware. The one who became conscious of the realization that there is this real self that exists within the real presence, and the two are one. The Father and I are one. He who sees me sees the Father. And the beauty of those words happens to be that Jesus said, I have discovered this, you can discover it too. He said, I'm just a mirror. You can look into me and see what I see and be what I am and discover what I have discovered. You too can know this. You too can be this. And he waxes beautifully, eloquently about the master teacher Jesus. And when you read that chapter, you're just going to have a whole different insight with regard to Jesus. You're going to have a different feeling around Jesus. And you're going to understand him a little bit more fully. Because he was never understood, ever. I don't think to this day he's understood. People didn't get him. People of his day certainly didn't get him. They didn't know what to do with a realized master. But not just a realized master. What they had on their hands and couldn't see was the very first non-dual master in the West, whose whole message and reason for being was radical love and radical inclusivity. They didn't get that. They couldn't cope with that. And Jesus understood, like no one before him, or since maybe, has understood, the whole concept of impermanence and the transitoriness of life as a human being. Impermanence and the brevity of life as a human being. Understood that everything changes, nothing remains the same. And yet we get caught up in the busyness of the embodiment that pushes us into collecting and acquiring and getting and spending, as the poet said, as I reminded us all this morning, getting and spending. Little we see in nature that is ours, we have given our hearts away, a sordid boon. Well, Jesus knew and understood impermanence and transitoriness. And that is why he cautioned us, don't cling to the things of this world. They're distraction. They're going to stop you and block you and put you in that place of being at the end of the trail and blocked by barriers of granite. Nothing will last. Nothing that I have acquired in my life will remain mine. Not even this body. It must go. It must change. Everything I have acquired must be left. And in time, all of that will change too. So what do I have of wealth, of opulence, of abundance? I have my spirit. I have my truth. I have my real life. That is the greatest gift any one of us could have been given, and is permanent and not transitory, but keeps moving forward and keeps expanding and keeps becoming more of itself. The more I become detached, non-attached to outcome, and surrendered to the beauty and the grace of life because of my deep trust and faith in knowing that I am taken care of, that I am given to, that I am provided for, and I don't have to worry. Oh my, that's a faith indeed. How many of us would be capable of this moment of standing up and saying, that's the faith I have now. And becoming so non-attached to everything and everyone in our lives. And yet, that's what the ones who wake up and are realized come to. Great Saint Teresa of Avila. All things are passing. Alone God never changes, and alone God suffices, and patience gains all things. Now, these are not words shared to make us feel that there's something wrong because we have stuff and things, and we're less than because we have stuff and things. Not so, not at all. We can have everything and anything. It's what we feel around it, what we think around it that makes it good for us or not so good for us. It's our ability to see that these have been given to us on loan while we are here to use for the good of all, to share. When we ourselves are prospered, we want to help others to be prospered too, because that's how Spirit is within us. We don't want to hoard, amass, and keep things for ourselves. That will not bring us any sense of communion, at one-ment, or cause our longings to cease and our sorrows depart, and our fear and doubt vanish. Absolutely not. That will keep us in all of those things. Our clingingness, we're Klingons. We stay in places too long. We stay in relationships too long. We do a lot of stuff for too long. And even when we know it's for our good, we cling on. If we give it up, it's for our good. Nevertheless, we cling on. And sometimes we have to let it go, hissing, kicking, and screaming, even though it's for our good. And then after the fact, we look back and say, oh gosh, why didn't I do that sooner? I should have done that sooner. What is this life? It's full of care. We have not time to stand and stare, says the poet. Oh, in today's society, especially in the West, it's such a frenetic rush. Such a frenetic rush. And when you go out into the places that are sparser than the cities and so on, people will always say, I'm here because I couldn't stand living in those cities where everything is crowded and everybody pushes into each other and nobody has time to even stop and say hello. I'm here in the smaller community because I have a sense of community in it. And I can feel a sense of belonging to a group, to a community, part of. And that's where our longing comes in too. We are longing to be part of. We are longing to belong. We are longing to find ourselves in communion. In communion. We want that village, and we want the village to be a safe village. We want that village to be a village we can go to and be ourselves in. And there's only one, and that's the relationship we have with the source of our being and coming into communion with that. And so, for you and for me to have all that has been promised and given, it's not just a promise, the promise has been fulfilled. And we have been given the gifts of the kingdom, and we have been given the assurance that a life of completion is there for us, a life of abundance is there for us, a life of joy is there for us, a life of all good is there for us. But the way to it is through what we know, what we feel, what we believe, what we have faith in. If you sum up the teaching of Jesus, you can sum it up in one word: belief. Belief. It is done unto you as you believe. If you sum up your real name and your real essence and your true nature, Jesus has done that in one word again: love. God is love, and we who live in love live in God, and God lives in us, he said. So this week, what we're going to be concentrating on is the real self of ourselves and the true nature of ourselves. And that will be love. Love not hugged to ourselves, but love in expression. Love in the givingness of life back onto itself by means of each one of us. Love poured out. Go back to the glossary and look up the word spirit, and it says the givingness of God back onto itself. The givingness of life back onto itself. And that's your nature. That's my nature. Your name is love. My name is love. You can call God whatever you want to call God, life whatever you want to call life. And it matters not if you do not know, if you do not feel, if you are not in communion with that power, that presence, that source of being. None of it matters if it's not a palpable feeling, if it's not a palpable knowing, a palpable awareness that you and I can actually feel. And remember, it's all about feeling conviction. Conviction. And conviction is the action and the power of feeling working upon thought and belief to remove anything unlike the truth from it, so that we can be in the love, in that wonderful agape love, which is the Greek word for love. Agape. Agape love. Unconditioned and unconditional love. It's yours. Not for the knowing, not for the asking even. It's yours because that's the way you're made. It's yours for the discovery, recovery, remembrance. And that's only going to happen through faith, and faith is only going to happen through prayerful communion with the source of our being. God so loved the world that God gave the world you. What are you doing about that? Ernest Holmes says, ask the question, have you really given God a chance yet? Have you really given God a chance yet? If not, let's do it. And when we do it, let's do it with deep faith, deep, deep devotion, deep praise, deep gratitude, deep love, and then see, oh, the places you'll go, the blessings you'll experience, and the joy you will feel. For life will suddenly be all that it's meant to be for each and every one of us. And we will be the grace and the blessing in it. And wherever we show up, that's what will show up. The grace and the blessing of the light and the love and the peace and the beauty and the power of Spirit, doing what Spirit longs to do through us. Why would we deprive Spirit of such an opportunity when Spirit never deprives us of anything? So again, we'll leave this time of sharing with that remembrance. God is love, and we who live in love live in God, and God lives in us, and that's what ceases the longing and the yearning and the struggle and the strife. God, good, life, love, and so it is.
We invite you to experience Dr. Moira in person on Sundays. Our services are at 9 a.m. and 11 a.m., and childcare is available. Please join us. If you enjoy these messages and would like to make a donation to our center, please visit our website at redondocsl.org. Thank you for your support of this ministry.